We got to use the new Bauer air compressor to refill the scuba tanks on the boat, so now we can set out for our second scuba dive while on board SV Curiosity.
The dive site that we will be exploring today is called Hospital Point. It's located at the northern end of Isla Sorte, which is a 5-minute boat ride away from Bocastown.
We read online that the dive site usually has bad visibility as there is a freshwater runoff, but when the tide is right, you should be able to see the site rather well. The visibility wasn't great when we started our descent, but once we got down and close to the wall, we were able to see everything just fine. After peeking into a few crevices, I soon came across this fish that blended right into its surroundings. I later looked it up in the fish identification book, and it's a bearded toadfish. How cool!
The coral wall is full of dark, overhanging ledges, so we are glad that we brought our underwater lights so that we could look for the creatures hiding in the depths of the wall. We see quite a few lobsters while on this dive, but the size difference between the lobsters we were seeing in Florida compared to Panama is quite drastic. The lobsters we have seen in Panama so far seem to be quite a bit smaller than the ones we have seen in the past.
It's neat how every little crack or hole along the wall seems to be home to a different type of underwater creature. We soon find ourselves lost in the underwater world, trying to identify all of the different types of fish, creatures, and corals.
We are starting to get used to having at least one jellyfish swimming around with us when diving in Panama. But we still proceed with caution to try and avoid touching them. They always seem to find that one spot of exposed skin, no matter how much clothing you wear while swimming.
Before we know it, an hour has gone by. Since our tanks have a limited air supply, we head back to the dinghy to get out of our dive gear and head back to the boat.
We're going ziplining.
Are you excited to go ziplining?
So excited.
It's been 2 years since the last time we went ziplining in Jamaica. We've heard the ziplines here at the Red Frog Resort were pretty cool, so we're really excited to fly through the sky.
Without any safety spiel or instructions, I tie off onto the first zip line and fly through the jungle canopy. At least we had ziplined before so that we knew what we were doing. We felt pretty safe with all of our safety gear in place and all of their equipment looked well maintained.
The first few ziplines were pretty easy going. We just strapped in and held on, facing forward. Then we got more brave, spinning around and going backwards as the ziplines got longer and faster.
Ziplining is a great way to see a whole lot of the jungle really fast. Too fast to see if any monkeys or sloths are living it up in the jungle canopy.
We sure are glad we don't have any trouble trusting the 2 small cables or our gear holding us up almost 100 feet off the jungle floor.
After going down a few zip lines, the guides encourage us all to get a little more daring while flying down the lines while doubling up and going upside down.
The jungle growth is to the point where you have to occasionally dart around some branches or leaves.
Swinging around like Tarzan and Jane from platform to platform is awesome. And crossing the hanging bridge is a bit of a challenge as I'm a little too short to properly reach the cable above.
On the longest line of the day, the guides say that I'm the only one heavy enough to go on my own without doubling up. Maybe I need to lay off the tacos a little bit. It's pretty amazing how thick the jungle is. It's just walls of green with no way of seeing where the jungle floor is for the most part. And only occasionally are you in the full light of the sun.
Going doubled up with the guides is a lot faster than going on your own, and I even get to flip upside down. We wanted to fly the drone while we were ziplining from one of the platforms. The jungle canopy ended up being so thick that there was not a sufficient opening to fly the drone in and out with confidence. So it is decided to save the drone flying for after the ziplining.
The zipline was lots of fun. It's different than all the other ones we have been on before. We have never had to control our speeds or direction with a glove before, which is pretty cool. Some of the runs were pretty fast. There aren't many openings to see much of a view of the island, but the feeling of being enclosed in the jungle is pretty cool too. The lack of a safety orientation or other briefs did not bother us because the equipment looked like it was in good shape, and it gave us a sense of freedom to have fun and play around while we were going through the zip lines. We hike up to a road with a fairly large clearing so Nikki and Jason can fly the drone around the jungle canopy where we just ziplined. They also grab some sweet shots of the island and the beaches. Our guide seemed pretty impressed with the Wind's new drone, which is small and powerful. It is pretty sweet, and I'm thinking that we should get a drone one of these days.
Wow, another 2 amazing days in Panama at the Red Frog. We got to do a pretty cool dive on a small wall with tons of marine life, where we saw some interesting looking creatures like the bearded toadfish that we had never seen before. Then, that night, we hiked up to an opening in the dark to film our first ever night time-lapse of the stars. We filmed for 4 hours to only get a few seconds of video. The next day, we got to experience Red Frog Zipline and Canopy Tour, where we got to glide through the jungle. Let's see where the next adventure takes us.